So first things first, I'm gonna install the condenser in the dryer. I was looking through the instructions here and they're pretty detailed. So I gotta go ahead and remove my radiator right now and disconnect the hoses, drain the fluid, take off my air intake. So let me do that and I'll bring you back. Well, that's one thing out the way. All right, so now that I got the radiator out, it's asking to cut a hole in the core support, and it comes with this template right here. And here is the instructions. This template goes right above the core support bracket. The problem is, in my case, is that I had already drilled a hole there. I drilled a hole in there already, almost exactly where this one needs to be. And here is my power wire that goes to my battery. So that template sits right directly above here, and this hole is pretty close to where this one is. So I'm gonna have to run another hole further out so I can reroute my power, and then possibly make this one a little bit bigger in the right spot, so I can match it up to the template over there. But that's the next step. If this wasn't here, you would use the template. You would sit it directly above the core support bracket and then mark it where it calls for, and then use an 1.25" hole saw to drill the hole. The problem is, in my case, I already have a hole and I can't use a hole saw anymore. So I'm gonna have to ream that hole to where it needs to be. So a little bit of a setback, but nothing impossible. So I'm gonna move my power over and then mark where the hole needs to be, and then put it exactly like the template. So let me work on that. Well, I didn't have to ream that hole, which is great, because to say the least, that is not fun. So the template calls for the hole to be right here. So I am gonna be able to use the hole saw right there. So it calls for 1.25" hole saw. So I am gonna still have to reroute my power a little bit over, but that's where I'm gonna go ahead and drill that hole for the hard line on the dryer. So let me get that done and I'll bring it back. All right, and just like that, we have our hole here, 1.25" with the hole saw. So I just put the grommet back on where I had my power, and if the hard lines fit through here from the dryer, I'm just gonna run it right back there instead of making another hole. So I'm gonna see how it fits. If anything, this thing just pushes over. So if that works, I'm gonna leave it like that. If not, then I will make another hole, but I'm gonna leave that as is for now and move on to the next step. So I'm gonna put the dryer brackets on the condenser. So I got the condenser over here, and the dryer is down there, this one right here, and calls for this bracket here. So that is the next step in the instructions. Put them right here. Excuse me. Here's a condenser again, and here's a bracket. So it comes with the screws and everything. Okay, I got the next two steps done, which were the brackets for the brackets on the condenser. So it calls for the dryer bracket, the front of the condenser, which is this one right here. Real easy to install. And then it calls for the mounting brackets in the back. You see here on the bottom, rear view. So there is a passenger and a driver side. So you got to make sure this longer one, it goes on the passenger side, right here where the hard line's bolted. So that's done. Next, let's see what's next on here. Oh, we can go ahead and mount the dryer. Sweet. So let me turn this around and get this mounted. Okay, so I added the dryer to the condenser, and I added the hard line, and I used the proper O-rings for it. It came with the O-rings, so you got to lubricate the O-ring, put O-ring on both, and then tying them up to 12 foot-pounds of torque. So now the next step after that is to do this all in the car. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this stuff back together. All right, so I got the condenser and the dryer on. They're not completely bolted in yet because it goes secure with the radiator and the fan shroud. So it's just holding on the brackets right here right now. Right here on this side, and then over here on the bottom. So the grommet gave me a little bit of trouble, but I was able to get it in. And you can see I still have a little bit of room for my power cable. But all this is on now. This is the dryer, condenser. So now all that's left here is to put my radiator back on, excuse me. So I had not installed my second spa fan because this is gonna go direct connected with the AC. Whenever I turn on the AC, this one's gonna turn on. That one I had it with with a separate switch for the temperature on the car. So that one turns on once the car reaches a certain temperature. So all that's left is to put this back on and fill it back up with water, and button all this stuff back up, put the air cleaner back on. But the condenser's on and the dryer's on, and that wasn't too bad at all. So now I just gotta get this back on and get it buttoned up, and bring y'all back when I get that done. Well, that's it for the dryer and condenser. I got the radiator buttoned up. All I need to do now is fill the radiator back up with antifreeze and then put my air cleaner back on. I still have to connect the trinary switch here, and then the hoses to the actual to the box that goes under the dash. So I'll bring y'all back once I open up that second box over there. Well, this box had an array of things. Seems a bit overwhelming at the moment, but I'm sure I'll get through it. There's a lot of parts and instructions that are already done on the car, so I don't have to remove anything other than the duct under the dash. So I'm gonna assemble this in the meantime, and then I'll bring y'all back and show you what it looks like. So on the evaporator here, it has 2 brackets that I just installed. There are these 2 right here. This is the first one. This is the one that goes to the firewall. And this is the one that goes to the mounting on top where the speaker mounts on the dash. So you gotta put on these, which is very easy, super basic. And then you gotta add the heater lines. These 2 are for the heater. And you gotta make sure you use the proper lubrication and the O-rings. It comes with the O-rings and the lubrication. So you gotta make sure you put those on so you won't tear up your O-rings. And then it has a suction line that you install, and then the one that goes to the, what's this thing called? To this line right here. You have your in and out for the AC, and then your heater. So that was pretty easy. That's the only thing I've done to the evaporator so far. I don't think it needs anything else besides the wiring on top. So I'll get to that in a minute. I didn't expect to have to take all this apart, but this original duct for the defrost here, it has to come out. And there's no way to get to that thing without taking out all these things. So do yourselves a favor, if you know you're gonna put AC and you're in the building stage, just go ahead and cut this thing out and save yourself some time. I didn't realize this whole thing had to be cut out. So yeah, I'm gonna have to take this out to add the new one. So there we go. Well, I got the duct out. Man, that was not fun at all. The snips helped a whole lot. These snips down here. So I had a little bit of a cutoff wheel, and I started it with the cutoff wheel on the grinder. So that's why I draped a wet towel and a wet t-shirt in there because of the spark. I cut what I could with that, and then I cut out the rest with the snips. So this defrost thing, it's pretty good now. So this is a piece that goes in there after you take the duck out. Let me see. So this thing goes in here just like that. And it screws on over here on the other side. It's got 2 screws that go over there. And again, this is for the defrost, which probably never gonna use. But whatever. Amen. That was tough. It's like a shark went in there and took that out. But anyways, the thing's out now, so on to the next. And on to the next problem, really, because I don't want to drill holes in my firewall. And I don't know how I'm gonna mount this thing on the inside without doing that. So we'll see. I may weld the stud on the inside to hold the bracket that holds the whole evaporator box. But I don't know. I haven't even figured out where to put the studs yet, because I couldn't get the evaporator in there to sit flush because the evaporator box was hitting the duct on the bottom. So now I can get in there. I had to gut everything just to do this, so it's just something you're gonna have to expect if you want AC after your car's done. So I'm gonna take these towels out now, and I'm gonna test fit the evaporator box again, and hopefully see where everything goes and get this thing mounted. So I'll bring y'all back. Hey guys, I'm getting ready to mount the bracket for the evaporator box. This is the plate that would originally go bolted to the firewall with these bolts right here, and then these other holes go bolted to the firewall itself. These bolts are to hold the evaporator box, those 3, and then that speaker bracket right there holds the top of the evaporator box. So I didn't want to make any holes in my firewall. So what I figured I would do after a whole bunch of measuring is I'm gonna weld these bolts right here and use them as studs. And then I'm gonna weld this plate right here on the inside of the firewall, the original firewall. So I have of course the original firewall, and then I welded the plate on the front of that for the shade firewall. So I'm gonna weld this plate to the original firewall, and then I got everything marked on this side. So once I weld that in, I'm just gonna make the holes for the studs, put this back on, and then I'm going to mount the evaporator box right up there. That thing is a really tight fit. There's not a lot of room for anything in there. So, but that's what I figured I would do after a lot of measuring and stuff, so I wouldn't have to put holes in my firewall. I really didn't want to do that. I like the way it looks right now. It probably wouldn't look bad, but it would have had a bolt right here and then another 2 right here, kind of like in a triangle, and I like the way it looks like that. That was a lot of work to get that thing smooth, and even to drill these holes was kind of heartbreaking. I later found out that I could have cut them elsewhere, but I was too late. I had already done that. But that's where the original box, the evaporator box, mounts straight to those holes right there. So that's what I'm gonna do. Weld that plate on the inside, weld in the bolts, use them as studs, and then mount the box on the inside, and that should be it for the evaporator box. Took me a while to get everything measured. This is not necessary if you just have a regular firewall. This is just so I won't have any bolts showing on the other side. So little extra work, but I think it'll be worth it versus having holes in my firewall. I cut out the original duct already for the defrost, and I mounted the new defrost bracket. It just has those two bolts there on the bottom, or screws. Those are self taps. So I put a little bit of silicone on the other side of them because that's what it called for. I doubt that thing will ever leak, but The silicone will help it. It was hell getting that thing out, as I said before, the original duct, but it's out now, and now I get to do a little bit of welding, which sucks, but it's better than having holes in my firewall. I'm just gonna have to pull the carpet back again. I do have all the sound deadening stuff, so you know that won't be so bad, you know, getting sparks on that. I just gotta pull the carpet back and pull the firewall pad out and drape a few just wet towels somewhere just to keep from any kind of sparks getting where they don't need to be. So let me do that and I'll bring y'all back. All right, so I have the plate welded in now. Get up here. And this is pretty nerve-wracking, welding in here with, you know, the seats and everything, the carpet. So this plate is welded in. I plug welded on 4 different spots right here. So this sucker ain't going no place. And now I can use these bolts to mount the evaporator in the back. So the evaporator uses these 2 bolts, this one up here, and then one right here where the speaker mounting thing was. So the reason I did that was so I wouldn't have to put any holes in the firewall. And as you can see, I got the carpet pulled back. I got a wet towel there. I got my welding apron right there, and then I kind of just protected the seats with the back of the floor mats. And then I had my body pretty much covering all of this because I was all up in there like that. So sure as hell didn't want to put a hole in my seat or burn anything else. So there's no burn through. Everything looks the same here in the front. And that was the whole purpose for welding that plate on the inside. Yep, all good. So that worked out. Oh, man, that really sucked welding in there like that. It's just kind of nerve-wracking. Make sure nothing got burnt, you know what I mean? So now I'm gonna go ahead and take all this out, put the firewall dash pad, I already put the holes in it, and everything should be ready to bolt up for the evaporator. Well, there it is, guys. Here are the studs for the mounting backing plate right there. 1, 2, 3 on top. So that worked out fairly well. That was kind of hard, but it's just something I had to do so I wouldn't drill holes in the firewall. But there it is. Now I can go ahead and mount the evaporator box up, and I can go ahead and bolt it in. Well, I got the evaporator box bolted in. Welding that backing plate on the inside firewall worked out pretty good. Everything lined up. One thing you guys can take note of is this bracket that goes from the dash to the cowl area over here. On some, you have to bend this a little bit. Not all of them, but mine was in a little bit of a bind right here, and so I just bent it up. Just got some pliers and bent it that way, out of the way. Or you can cut it. It's just way easier just to bend it. Everything went good. Everything's nice and level the way it should be. So I do have to extend my wires for my color bar. Those wires were too short because I had to reroute the wires behind. Well, actually, no, not behind. Just right above and then behind right here on the evaporator box. So I just gotta extend the wires for the color bar, which is easy. No big deal. On the firewall side, the only thing I see is gonna be a bit of an issue is putting on the heater hoses, because these things don't come out a whole lot and there's not much room around it. But there is room from the back of the evaporator box to push in a hose, and then they have to go clamped on the other side. So there is some room to do that on the back side. These will be easy, and these actually have a grommet, so I'm gonna put the grommet in here just to cover the the hole around it. These don't have a grommet, but by the time you put the hose in, it'll cover whatever is left right there. So that worked out good. So everything looks the same over here on the outside. So now I'm gonna run the ducts, or the hoses, they're down there. The kit only comes with 2 hoses. So what you need to do on the hoses, so there's 2 hoses, one's bigger than the other, bigger diameter and obviously longer. So the smaller one is for the defrost, and you just stretch it out and you cut it to wherever it needs to be, and then you make two hoses out of that, and then this one is you make 3 out of it, but it stretches out a lot. So it goes to the 3 vents on the dash. But I'm gonna show that in more detail. I just wanted to show that right now for a little bit. So I'm gonna go see what the next step is. But as far as the evaporator box, it's in. This would definitely be a lot easier. You know, just with the regular firewall, or just drilling holes through the firewall and bolting it to the firewall. That would have been way easy. But it's in now. That thing is really, really sturdy. I don't see that ever coming loose or having any kind of play. That thing is really on there. So these 2 top ones here, these 2 top vents, one here and one here, they go connected to the defrost right here. And as you can see, man, that thing is super snug. I mean, there's no room in there for anything. So it does come with another glove box on the inside, which I already had. I had bought one from my buddy Tim, who I got this kit from at Last Minute Customs. He had already sold me the glove box, so, and it's really shallow. I'll show y'all whenever I install it. So let me move on to the next step and I'll bring y'all back. Man, if y'all made it to this far in the video, thank you. That kind of went way longer than expected. It seems like I'm gonna have to do a 3-part series to get through the whole thing, the whole install from start to finish. This is my first time doing a vintage air, so I've had to figure out some things along the way, and then not wanting to drill my firewall took me a little bit to figure it out, so it worked out really well. Next up, we got some wiring, run the ducts, the AC lines, the Freon, so we still got a little bit of work to do. I think the hardest part is done. I hope so anyways, because that was quite a bit of work. I tried to keep the video short, but I just couldn't. It was just way too much information. So I'm trying to keep everything as detailed as possible just to help the next person if they ever decide to do this themselves. So, man, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.